So I want to kick things off here talking about Louisville's team coming into this year for the basketball side of things. First off, shout out to Max Barr for the graphics. He did these for I think every team, at least in the Power Four. So they're pretty dope. So shout out to him for making this. Makes it a lot easier to do a full team overview. And also, obviously, shout out to Pat Kelsey, his staff, and the people at U of L for putting up the money and all that for making this happen. Because as we've seen with other schools, also money isn't all it takes to build a roster. You got to go out and get the guys. So shout out to Pat Kelsey for that. But if you look at this team and you just compare it to last year's team, like it's night and day when it comes to height, athleticism. You don't have the shooters that you had last year. I would say there's not a single shooting specialist on this team compared to what you had last year. But you addressed the needs that you had, the glaring needs, which was physicality. Every time that Louisville played a team that was physical, you could pretty much guarantee that it was going to be a loss or an ugly game. That Louisville had to shoot the lights out to stay in or to even win. And the very first addition to the team was Flory Badunga, and say what you will about his height, being about 6'8", but there's a metric I can't think of who does it, but it's based on how tall you play, which goes into your wingspan and other things, and essentially he plays at 7'1", even though he's only about 6'8". Massive addition for the team. A center that Louisville hasn't had in a long time. That kind of archetype of center. Jackson Shellstead came with him. He didn't come from Kansas, obviously, but he came committed at the same time, same agent, package deal type thing. And Shellstead's the kind of guard that Louisville hasn't had, probably at least speed wise, since Darius Perry. And I know that's a funky comparison. It's not a player comparison, but outside of Siva and Russ, the next fastest Louisville guard comes to mind is probably him. I think Shellstead has that kind of speed. Last year, he didn't have the greatest year statistically, but he played with a broken hand that he re-injured that had him out for the remainder of the year. Then you got Carter Knox was the third addition. He's more of a 3-and-D guy. He's someone that a lot of people thought could break out last year at Arkansas, but he had a lot of injuries. I read that he had turf toe coming into the season. He had a hip injury in January, I believe, and then ultimately lost the remainder of his year with a torn meniscus that he's recovering from now. Should be on track to be fine at the start of the season. Alvaro Forgaris was the Horizon League Player of the Year 2 years ago at Robert Morris. Last year was at Iowa. He came off the bench and played more 5 than 4, which he's a natural 4 in my opinion. But he was their third leading scorer, even though he was only fifth in minutes. And everyone kind of knows about his tournament run. Ended a little ugly, but he had the game winner against number 1 seed Florida and had 2 or 3 good games out on top of that. And then you have Woolley coming back. The fan base is really wishy-washy on Woolley, but I like him as far as his catch and shoot abilities. I think he's statistically speaking, I think he shoots. I think I read that he shoots 41% or 42% on catch and shoot threes, which is what this team needs him to do. I do know it seemed that staff tried to have him as the sixth man, but they missed out on 3 of the bigger targets that they targeted for his starting spot, which would have been Blackwell, Juke Harris, and Momcilovic. But I think Woolley, he had some ups and downs last year. He played out of position quite a bit last year, with Michael being out. I think there's a world where he can be the starting 2, give you 12 to 13 points per game, on solid shooting efficiency. He has to work on his ball handling and his defense, but I think him having a defined role this year would be good for him. On the bench, the top guy to talk about down here, we'll do Deshane Montgomery. He came from Dayton. He's one of those guys that if he's on your team, you love him because he plays with a passion and a fire that is just nasty. I think he had 2 ejections last year at 7 technical fouls, which for some people that they might not like that, but every team needs an asshole. That's the easiest way I can put it. and he'd be that guy. He's a great defender. He's only about 6'4", but he's got really long arms. I wouldn't be shocked if he had a 6'9" or tall or longer wingspan. He can play the 2 and the 3. And he's just a guy that I think can come in and spell Knox or Woolley and lock up a team's best perimeter player. And he's a great slasher. He's not the best shooter. He's a capable shooter. And then over here you got Abina Akezi. I've heard it pronounced Akezi and Akizi, but I believe it's Akezi. He was the number, depending on where you look, either number 2 through the number 5 rated player in the 27 class, reclassified to this year, and he's still listed as the number 1 center per 24/7 Sports, even in this class. Coming to back up Badunga, I've seen a lot of people saying he's a power forward. I've seen a lot of people saying, he's going to play all these minutes and go to the NBA this year. I think that's maybe a little unrealistic. He is a little raw. I think a more realistic idea for him this season is, 12 to 18 minutes per game. Spells Flory, maybe does some double big lineups with Flory. And you take what you get. Whatever he scores, he'll play good post defense at least. But I'm not expecting some of the more lofty expectations that the fan base has for him. If you look up what Flory did as a freshman, or even somebody like Patrick Ngongba at Duke did as a freshman, those are kind of like my expectations for Kessie this year. Over here you have London Johnson, another guy that's pretty polarizing. The whole G League thing, a lot of people were not happy about it, but I think the G League is no different than some B League in Europe. It's the same thing. He didn't play any actual NBA minutes. I've also heard mixed things about his abilities. So I've heard some people say that, he might not be even as good as Kobe Rogers. I've heard other people say that he's, long, athletic, dog on defense, and his jump shot is improving. So I think Shellstead averages like 35 minutes played per game of 3 years at Oregon. So I would expect London Johnson to be that backup point guard, but I don't know really what you can expect for him per game. I don't think anyone should expect anything crazy, but I think he'll be a solid contributor. Boyan Jong. So it's spelled, and I've heard a lot of people say Zhang, but according to Google, the pronunciation is Jong with a J, Jong. There's a world where he comes in and plays 8 to 12 minutes a game and, is a pretty good three-point shooter. Him and Isaac Ellis are both going to be 20 in January. They're not normal freshmen. They're pretty old for their class. And the staff had him on a visit, and he was 6'8", 220, like I believe barefoot. Like it's very good size for a wing. He's a guy that if he comes in, it translates, and he can play the 3 or the 4 in spot minutes and knock down shots. That would be great for us. Down here in the bottom, Gabe Dines, 7'5". There's not a lot to really get into there. A lot of people think he's, garbage. I don't think he's a world beater or anyone that we should expect great things from, but if you watch him, actually take some time and watch where he played, even at USC, he moves very well for his size. He's not just some big lumbering non-athlete. He can move pretty good. And I expect him to play some decent minutes here and there. This foul trouble is going to happen, and at the end of the day, 7'5", it's just a big guy. And then lastly, Isaac Ellis, emergency point guard. I think he could hit a 3 here and there, but if there's one guy that I think would get the least amount of minutes this year, I'd put that money on Ellis. But I plan to break down players individually. I plan to break down the recruiting class a little more, each like the portal versus high school and all that. This is just kind of one big, long, solid overview of everybody, and those are my thoughts.